German command never expected America built a bomber in just 4 hours. October 14, 1942, Berlin, Germany. Generaloberst Franz Dietrich sat in the mahogany-paneled war room of the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, reading the latest intelligence assessment from agents operating in the United States. His adjutant, Hauptmann Werner Kleist, stood at attention as Dietrich read aloud with unmistakable contempt.
Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you.
The Americans claim they will produce one heavy bomber every hour within 12 months. Current intelligence suggests they are experimenting with assembly line techniques borrowed from automobile manufacturing. He tossed the report onto the table with a dismissive laugh. Impossible! Absurd American propaganda! What Dietrich did not know, what none of the German High Command could possibly comprehend, was that at that very moment, 5,000 miles away in Willow Run, Michigan, Henry Ford's production engineers were already assembling a B-24 Liberator bomber in just 4 hours and 18 minutes, shattering every conception of what industrial production could achieve. The confidence radiating from the German war room that autumn morning was not baseless arrogance. It was built upon mathematical certainty and historical precedent that seemed unshakable. Germany had dominated European industrial production since the late 19th century. Their aircraft manufacturing facilities in Regensburg, Augsburg, and Dessau represented the pinnacle of precision engineering. Each bomber rolled off German production lines as a masterpiece of craftsmanship, assembled by skilled workers who had trained for years to achieve the necessary precision. The Heinkel H-111 medium bomber required approximately 55,000 man-hours to complete, from raw materials to finished aircraft. Skilled craftsmen hand-fitted each component, ensuring perfect alignment and structural integrity. This approach guaranteed quality and reliability that German commanders trusted with their lives. Every rivet was inspected. Every wire bundle was hand-routed. Every control surface was individually balanced. Generaloberst Dietrich had personally toured the Messerschmitt facilities in Augsburg 3 months earlier. He had watched master craftsmen spending entire days fitting a single engine mount, ensuring tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. This was proper aircraft construction, he believed. Aircraft were complex machines requiring skilled labor and careful attention. The American notion of mass production using semi-skilled workers was laughable. How could automobile assembly techniques possibly apply to sophisticated military aircraft? The very suggestion insulted German engineering expertise. Oberst Heinrich Baumann, director of Luftwaffe production planning, had written extensively about why American mass production claims were mathematically impossible. Aircraft construction required thousands of precisely manufactured components that must fit together with minimal tolerances. Each airframe was slightly different due to natural variations in materials and manufacturing processes. Skilled craftsmen compensated for these variations through expert fitting and adjustment. Semi-skilled workers, using standardized procedures, could never achieve the necessary precision. The German assessment was supported by pre-war observations of American industry. German engineers who had visited American factories in the 1930s reported shoddy construction standards and excessive reliance on interchangeable parts rather than proper fitting. American automobiles were produced quickly but lacked the refinement and durability of German engineering. Why would aircraft be any different? The intelligence reports from America seemed to confirm German superiority. Photographs showed massive factories under construction, but German analysts noted the absence of skilled craftsmen. The Americans were hiring women, farmers, and workers with no manufacturing experience. These people could not possibly build complex military aircraft. The whole enterprise seemed destined for catastrophic failure. Production statistics from 1941 supported German confidence. Germany had produced 11,776 aircraft that year using traditional craftsmanship methods. American production totaled only 19,433 aircraft, despite having a population 3 times larger and industrial capacity that dwarfed Germany. The Americans were clearly inefficient and disorganized. What German intelligence could not grasp was that American industrial planners were not trying to copy German methods. They were inventing an entirely new paradigm of manufacturing that would render craftsmanship obsolete. At the Willow Run plant outside Detroit, production engineer Charles Sorensen was applying principles that contradicted everything German engineers believed about aircraft manufacturing. Instead of craftsmen fitting parts to each airframe, Sorensen designed parts that required no fitting at all. Every component was manufactured to tolerances so precise that any part could be installed on any aircraft without adjustment. This required revolutionizing not just assembly, but the entire supply chain. The B-24 Liberator contained over 1.2 million individual parts sourced from 9,000 suppliers across America. Sorensen created a production system where every supplier manufactured to identical specifications, eliminating the need for on-site fitting and adjustment. Raw materials entered one end of the mile-long factory, and completed bombers emerged from the other end in a continuous flow. The assembly line itself defied German manufacturing philosophy. Instead of craftsmen working on stationary aircraft, the bombers moved continuously through specialized workstations. Each station performed a specific task, repeated thousands of times, until workers achieved perfect efficiency. A team that once required hours to install a wing could complete the task in minutes through practice and specialized tooling. German observers who learned about these techniques dismissed them as impossible. How could workers with no aircraft experience possibly build combat-worthy bombers? The answer was revolutionary. They did not need aircraft experience because the system was designed to eliminate the need for expertise.
The German conviction that aircraft required traditional craftsmanship was not merely cultural preference. It represented generations of engineering philosophy, rooted in the apprenticeship system that had defined European manufacturing since the medieval guild era. Every German aircraft mechanic spent minimum 4 years in technical training before touching production aircraft. Master craftsmen passed knowledge to apprentices through hands-on demonstration and years of supervised practice. This system had produced the Mercedes, the Maybach, the precision instruments that made German engineering synonymous with quality. To suggest that untrained workers could build combat aircraft using assembly line methods seemed to violate fundamental laws of manufacturing reality. Ober-engineer Karl Hoffmann, chief designer at Focke-Wulf, had published technical papers explaining why aircraft could never be mass-produced like automobiles. Aircraft operated in 3-dimensional space under extreme stress conditions. Structural failures meant death. Every joint, every weld, every fastener required inspection by experienced eyes that could detect flaws invisible to untrained observers. Automobiles operated on flat roads at modest speeds. Aircraft flew at 25,000 feet in temperatures reaching -40 degrees while subjected to combat damage and violent maneuvering. The comparison was absurd. The mathematical argument seemed irrefutable. A B-24 Liberator contained 1.2 million parts. If semi-skilled workers achieved even 99.9% accuracy, each bomber would contain 1,200 defective components. How many defects would cause catastrophic failure?
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
German engineers calculated that even a dozen critical failures would make aircraft unflyable. Therefore, mass production using standardized methods and minimal skilled labor was mathematically impossible. The aircraft would either fail quality inspection or kill their crews. American production planners were clearly incompetent. General Major Otto Krebs, responsible for Luftwaffe logistics planning, briefed senior commanders on American production capabilities in November 1942. His assessment was devastating. The Americans are building factories before developing production methods. They are hiring workers before training them. They are attempting to manufacture aircraft using workers who cannot distinguish a wing spar from a control cable. Our intelligence indicates absolute chaos in American factories. Workers are quitting due to impossible demands. Quality control inspectors are rejecting entire production runs. The American bomber program will collapse under its own incompetence within 6 months. The German assessment was supported by intercepted communications from American factories. Workers were indeed struggling with unfamiliar tasks. Production rates were initially dismal. Early B-24 bombers required extensive rework before acceptance. German analysts concluded that American mass production was failing exactly as predicted. What they failed to understand was that American industrial engineers expected initial chaos. They were not trying to achieve perfection immediately. They were designing a learning system that would improve continuously through iteration and refinement. Every production problem was analyzed, solutions were developed, and improvements were implemented across the entire supply chain. The system was designed to evolve. At the Ford Willow Run plant, production engineer Charles Sorensen was revolutionizing not just assembly methods, but the entire concept of manufacturing tolerances. Traditional aircraft construction accepted that each airframe was unique. Fitters compensated for variations through skilled adjustment. Sorensen eliminated variation at the source. Every part was manufactured to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch using precision machinery rather than craftsman's skill. If parts were manufactured precisely enough, fitting became unnecessary. Components simply snapped together like children's building blocks. The breakthrough came from understanding that precision manufacturing was actually easier than skilled fitting. A machine tool properly calibrated could reproduce identical parts infinitely without fatigue or variation. A craftsman, no matter how skilled, introduced small variations with each piece. Standardization eliminated the craftsman advantage entirely. German engineers dismissed this approach because it required investment in precision machinery and sophisticated quality control systems. Germany lacked the machine tool industry to implement such methods, even if they recognized their value. American industry possessed vast machine tool capacity from decades of mass-producing automobiles, appliances, and consumer goods. The infrastructure already existed. Joseph Stalin had famously toasted American industrial capacity during diplomatic meetings, stating that without American manufacturing capability, the Allies could never defeat Germany. German leadership dismissed this as communist propaganda, but Stalin understood what German generals did not. American industry was not constrained by European traditions of craftsmanship. They could invent entirely new manufacturing paradigms without resistance from entrenched guild systems or rigid technical hierarchies. The Willow Run plant itself represented thinking that was alien to German manufacturing philosophy. The building was 1 mile long, a quarter-mile wide, and covered 67 acres under the single roof. It was the largest room on Earth when completed. German factories were relatively small, dispersed facilities designed around traditional craft shop organization. Willow Run was designed around continuous flow production, where materials moved in straight lines from raw stock to finished aircraft. Every movement was calculated to eliminate wasted motion. The production line moved at precisely calibrated speed. Workers did not walk to their tasks. The tasks came to them. Tools were positioned exactly where needed, eliminating reaching or searching. Even the height of work platforms was optimized to reduce fatigue. Every element was engineered to maximize efficiency. This approach treated human workers as components in a larger machine, which offended German sensibilities about craftsman dignity. But it produced aircraft faster than any system in history. By December 1942, Willow Run was producing one B-24 Liberator every 9 hours. German intelligence received these reports and dismissed them as propaganda. No factory could possibly achieve such production rates. The numbers must be falsified for morale purposes. Generaloberst Dietrich personally annotated intelligence reports with skeptical comments. Even if Americans are producing aircraft quickly, quality must be abysmal. These bombers will fail in combat conditions. Our fighters will destroy them easily due to structural weaknesses from hasty construction. The assumption that speed and quality were inversely related seemed self-evident. Every engineer understood that rushing production meant accepting defects. But American industrial engineers had discovered that standardization actually improved quality by eliminating human error. When every part was identical and every assembly procedure was optimized, defects decreased rather than increased. Workers performing the same task thousands of times achieved perfection through muscle memory. The system was designed so that mistakes became physically difficult to make. What German command failed to grasp was that American production philosophy represented not just faster manufacturing, but a fundamental reimagining of how complex machines could be built. They were witnessing the birth of modern mass production applied to the most complex machines humans had yet created. The mathematical impossibility that German engineers had proven on paper was being disproven in a factory outside Detroit, one bomber every few hours, each aircraft identical to the last, each aircraft meeting or exceeding performance specifications. The production miracle that seemed impossible in October was already operational by December, and it was only beginning to accelerate.
Part 3. The Demonstration. The transformation from German skepticism to American reality reached its critical demonstration point on March 18, 1943, when a single statistic emerged from Willow Run that shattered every assumption German intelligence had made about industrial capability. Ford production managers recorded the completion time for B-24 Liberator serial number 4252634 at exactly 3 hours and 56 minutes from the moment raw aluminum entered the factory until the completed bomber rolled out onto the airfield. This was not propaganda. This was not an isolated achievement under ideal conditions. This was the new standard production time that would be sustained for months. German intelligence officers who received this information through neutral Swedish observers dismissed it as physically impossible. Hauptmann Kleist personally calculated that even installing the 4 massive Pratt & Whitney engines alone should require 3 hours using the fastest methods imaginable. The American claims suggested they were assembling an entire heavy bomber faster than German crews could install engines on an airframe already built. The mathematics seemed to defy reality itself. What German analysts could not comprehend was that American production engineers had eliminated the concept of installation time entirely. Engines did not need to be installed because they arrived at the assembly line already mounted on prefabricated engine nacelles, complete with fuel lines, electrical connections, and control linkages. Workers simply bolted the entire assembly onto the wing in minutes rather than spending hours routing individual systems. Every major component arrived as a complete subassembly. The wing arrived with fuel tanks installed, control surfaces attached, and all internal systems connected. The fuselage arrived with the cockpit complete, bombardier station equipped, and defensive gun positions installed. Final assembly workers simply connected major sections using precision-engineered attachment points that required no fitting or adjustment. The bomber literally snapped together. By April 1943, Willow Run was producing one B-24 every 63 minutes. German production facilities required 8,000 man-hours to complete a comparable Heinkel HE-177 heavy bomber. American production time had fallen to approximately 400 man-hours through pure efficiency multiplication. The ratio was 20 to 1. For every German bomber completed, American factories produced 20. The strategic implications were becoming mathematically undeniable, though German command refused to accept the data. If American production claims were accurate, the United States would achieve air superiority through sheer numerical overwhelming, regardless of individual aircraft quality or pilot skill. Quantity possessed its own quality when the numerical advantage reached 20-to-1 ratios. The first combat evidence arrived in May 1943 when the 8th Air Force began sustained bombing campaigns using B-24 Liberators manufactured at Willow Run. German fighter pilots reported that American bomber formations were growing larger with each mission. Luftwaffe intelligence attributed this to redeployment of existing aircraft rather than new production. The alternative explanation was too disturbing to accept. Lieutenant Friedrich Baker, a Luftwaffe pilot with 11 bomber kills, filed reports that troubled his commanding officers. The American bombers show no signs of hasty construction. Structural integrity appears excellent. We are shooting them down through concentrated fire, not because they are falling apart. These aircraft are well built despite American production claims. His observations contradicted German assumptions that mass-produced bombers would be inherently inferior. Quality and quantity were not mutually exclusive, as German engineers had insisted. By June, American bomber formations over Germany had grown to 300 aircraft in single raids. German fighter squadrons found themselves overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Even with favorable kill ratios, Luftwaffe losses were unsustainable because American replacement rates exceeded German destruction rates. For every American bomber shot down, 2 more appeared in subsequent raids. The mathematical reality was becoming operationally decisive. German aircraft production in June 1943 totaled 2,117 aircraft of all types. American production that same month exceeded 7,200 aircraft. The gap was widening rather than narrowing. Every month, American industrial capacity grew, while German production remained constrained by skilled labor shortages and traditional manufacturing methods. Oberst Heinrich Baumann, who had confidently predicted American production failure 6 months earlier, now faced data that contradicted everything he believed about manufacturing. His revised intelligence assessment in July was classified but survived in captured documents. American production statistics appear to be accurate. We can no longer dismiss them as propaganda. The implications are strategically catastrophic. We cannot match their production rates using current methods. Recommendation is immediate conversion to mass production techniques, but implementation would require 2 years minimum and resources we do not possess. The demonstration phase had proven beyond doubt that American industrial methods were not just faster, but represented a paradigm shift that Germany could not counter. The 4-hour bomber was real, and it was destroying German strategic calculations as effectively as it would soon destroy German cities. If you were shocked by these production statistics, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We are just getting started with how American industrial might completely overwhelmed German resistance through pure manufacturing superiority. The numbers we are about to reveal will demonstrate just how completely America won the production war before Germany even understood they were in one.
August 1943 brought the full realization of American production dominance when Willow Run achieved what German engineers had calculated as mathematically impossible. The factory completed 24 B-24 Liberators in a single 24-hour period, averaging exactly 1 bomber per hour. This was not a temporary surge or propaganda stunt. This became the sustained daily production rate maintained for 18 consecutive months. German industrial planners studying these statistics experienced something approaching existential dread. Their entire war economy was being outproduced by a single American factory. Generaloberst Dietrich, who had laughed at American production claims 10 months earlier, now sat in silent contemplation as intelligence reports documented the scale of American industrial mobilization. Willow Run was not alone. Consolidated Aircraft in San Diego was producing B-24s at similar rates. Douglas facilities were mass-producing C-47 transports. Boeing plants were manufacturing B-17 Flying Fortresses using identical mass production techniques. The cumulative output was overwhelming German comprehension. September brought the strategic bombing campaign to full intensity. Over 400 American heavy bombers struck targets across Germany in coordinated daylight raids. German fighter pilots reported ammunition exhaustion before destroying even a fraction of attacking formations. The numbers were becoming operationally impossible to counter. Luftwaffe squadrons that once dominated European skies now found themselves fighting defensive battles against numerically superior forces that replaced losses faster than Germany could inflict them. Major Hans Richter, commanding Fighter Wing 26, filed combat reports that revealed growing desperation. "We destroyed 11 American bombers today at cost of 4 of our own aircraft. By traditional metrics, this represents favorable exchange ratio. However, intelligence indicates Americans replaced those 11 bombers within 11 hours of production time. Our 4 fighters represent weeks of manufacturing capacity. We are winning tactically while losing strategically through simple mathematics of production." October brought the revelation that American production was still accelerating. Willow Run reduced average completion time to 58 minutes per bomber. Forward engineers were implementing continuous improvements that German manufacturers could not match because their craftsman-based system resisted standardization. Every efficiency gain at Willow Run was immediately replicated across all American aircraft factories through shared technical data. The entire industrial base was learning collectively. By November, cumulative American aircraft production exceeded German output by a factor of 3 to 1. United States factories had produced over 85,000 military aircraft in 1943 compared to German production of approximately 25,000 aircraft. The gap was widening monthly as American factories reached full efficiency while German production remained constrained by labor shortages and Allied bombing of manufacturing centers. December brought the psychological collapse of German production confidence. Oberst Bowman submitted his final assessment before being reassigned to frontline duty, a humiliation reserved for officers who had failed catastrophically. His report was brutally honest about German industrial inadequacy. "We have lost the production war. American manufacturing capacity exceeds our ability to counter through any conventional means. They are producing aircraft faster than we can destroy them. They are training pilots faster than we can kill them. The mathematics of attrition favor America absolutely." The human cost extended beyond combat losses to industrial demoralization. German factory workers laboring under increasingly difficult conditions watched American production statistics with growing hopelessness. They were being asked to work longer hours, producing fewer aircraft, while American factories, staffed by women and previously unemployed workers, produced aircraft in quantities that seemed impossible. The psychological impact was devastating. January 1944 brought systematic destruction of German infrastructure by American bombers that existed only because of production miracles German command had dismissed as propaganda. Cities that had never experienced strategic bombing found themselves targeted by formations of 500 or more heavy bombers. The aircraft filling the sky represented production capacity that Germany could never match even under optimal conditions. February brought the Big Week offensive, where American forces launched maximum effort bombing campaigns against German aircraft manufacturing facilities. Over 3,000 American bomber sorties struck targets across Germany. The irony was profound. American mass-produced bombers were destroying German factories that still relied on craftsman production methods. The industrial paradigm that Germany had dismissed was eliminating the traditional manufacturing system Germany had trusted. March brought stark production comparisons that revealed the complete extent of American industrial dominance. United States aircraft production in March 1944 exceeded 9,000 aircraft monthly. German production had fallen below 2,000 aircraft monthly due to Allied bombing and resource shortages. The ratio had grown to over 4 to 1. Even if German aircraft were qualitatively superior, which was increasingly questionable, the numerical disadvantage made victory mathematically impossible. The 4-hour bomber became the weapon that won the production war before the shooting war concluded. If you want to see how American industrial capacity ultimately crushed German resistance through pure manufacturing superiority, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on.
The final numbers will demonstrate just how completely America rewrote the rules of industrial warfare.
April 1944 brought the final accounting of industrial supremacy that German high command could no longer deny or rationalize. Willow Run had produced its 5,000th B-24 Liberator, representing more heavy bombers than Germany's entire four-engine aircraft production since the war began. A single American factory had outproduced the entire German aviation industry in the heavy bomber category. The mathematical impossibility that Generaloberst Dietrich had dismissed 18 months earlier had become the mathematical certainty of German defeat. By May, American aircraft production reached its wartime peak. United States factories completed 9,113 military aircraft in a single month. This represented more aircraft than Germany produced in the entire year of 1940. The production ratio had become so lopsided that German industrial planners stopped publishing separative statistics to avoid damaging morale. The truth was too devastating to acknowledge publicly. The D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944 demonstrated the ultimate strategic impact of American production dominance. Allied air forces achieved complete air superiority over the invasion beaches, partly because American factories had produced over 100,000 military aircraft by that date. German fighters that attempted to contest the landings were swept from the sky by numerical forces they could not match, regardless of pilot skill or tactical capability. The 4-hour bomber had enabled the invasion through sheer production volume. July brought desperate German attempts to implement mass production techniques, but the effort came too late and with insufficient resources. Converting factories from craftsman methods to assembly line production required time, machinery, and materials that Germany no longer possessed. American bombing had destroyed the machine tool industry necessary for precision mass manufacturing. The industrial infrastructure that could have saved Germany had been systematically eliminated. August brought the final collapse of German aircraft production as Allied armies overran manufacturing centers and cut supply lines. Monthly production fell below 1,000 aircraft as factories evacuated or ceased operations entirely. Meanwhile, American production continued at over 7,000 aircraft monthly despite reduced military demand. The industrial capacity that Germany had dismissed as propaganda had grown so large it exceeded military requirements. September brought reflection from German engineers who survived to analyze their catastrophic miscalculation. Ober-engineer Karl Hoffmann, who had published papers proving mass production was impossible, provided honest assessment in post-war interviews. "We were not wrong about manufacturing principles, we were wrong about American industrial capability. They possessed machine tool capacity, engineering talent, and organizational ability that exceeded our comprehension. They did not violate manufacturing laws, they simply operated at a scale we could not imagine." The final irony emerged in October when Allied forces captured intact German aircraft factories and examined production methods. American industrial engineers found sophisticated craftsmanship producing aircraft of excellent quality but in quantities that were strategically irrelevant. German workers were producing masterpieces at a rate of dozens per month. American workers were producing adequate aircraft at a rate of thousands per month. Adequacy multiplied by volume had defeated excellence constrained by tradition. May 8, 1945 brought Germany's unconditional surrender, ending the most decisive industrial production campaign in military history. Final statistics revealed the complete extent of American manufacturing dominance. United States factories had produced approximately 300,000 military aircraft during the war years. Germany produced approximately 119,000 aircraft total. The ratio was nearly 3-to-1, and the gap would have widened further had the war continued. The 4-hour bomber represented not just faster manufacturing, but a fundamental reimagining of industrial capability. Willow Run alone had produced 8,685 B-24 Liberators during the war, more heavy bombers than all German four-engine aircraft production combined. A single factory designed around principles German engineers dismissed as impossible had outproduced an entire nation's industrial capacity. The human cost of German industrial miscalculation extended beyond military defeat to economic devastation. Cities lay in ruins, partly because American production capacity had enabled sustained strategic bombing campaigns that Germany could not prevent or counter. The bombers filling German skies existed only because American industry had achieved what German engineers calculated was impossible. Post-war aviation development reflected lessons learned from American mass production triumph.
Every major aircraft manufacturer adopted assembly line techniques and standardized component manufacturing. The craftsman methods that dominated pre-war production became historical curiosities. Modern aircraft production still follows principles established at Willow Run. When German intelligence officers first read reports claiming America would build bombers in hours rather than months, they dismissed the concept as propaganda designed to damage German morale. By war's end, they understood they had been witnessing not propaganda, but industrial revolution. America had indeed created a production system that built bombers faster than Germany could shoot them down, and German traditional manufacturing never stood a chance against such focused industrial might. The 4-hour bomber proved that in modern warfare, the factory floor could be as decisive as the battlefield, and America had won that battle before German command even understood the fight had begun.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.